everyone, I'm Abigail, this is Megan, and welcome to another Two Kids Interview.
Today we're joined by Newbery Honor author Sheila Turnage.
Ms. Turnage has written the books Island of Spies, The Law of Finders Keepers, The Odds of Getting Even,
The Ghosts of Tupelo Landing, Haunted Inns of the Southeast,
and of course, the Newbery Honor book, 3 Times We Looked For.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Tupelo Landing is an imaginary place. After spending so much time there in your books, does it become real to you?
You know what? Tupelo Landing feels so real to me, you guys. I wrote 4 books set in Tupelo Landing, North Carolina, population 148 minus 1 for murder. And as I wrote my books, I drew maps of the town so that I knew where everywhere was and where everyone lived. And it feels not only real to me, but it feels real to people who read the book too. In fact, people have written to me and said, you know what, I'm coming to North Carolina on vacation, and I wanted to go to Tupelo Landing and stop by the cafe where so much of the action takes place, but I can't find Tupelo Landing on the map. Where is it? And then I have to tell them, I made it up. But even though it's fiction, it feels real to people, and it feels very real to me.
Will you take us back to Tupelo Landing for a 5th book?
Sometimes I think about doing that, Megan. I think it'd be so much fun to write another book with Mo and Dale. And so many people ask me, could there be another book of mysteries with them as they are now, or even when they're older, like in high school or grown up. But so far, I really don't have any plans to write one. We'll just have to wait and kind of see what unfolds.
What is it about kids our age that you enjoy writing books for?
Let's see, what do I enjoy writing books for? Middle grade? Middle grade is the most fun to me. I have written picture books for little kids. I have written books for adults, but middle grade is the most fun. And I think it's because the readers are, I know my readers are smart, they're involved, their imaginations are still so active. You guys are so creative. And that makes it fun to create a partnership and kind of join in with you all as I write books. And sometimes I think, too, that is like my level of maturity. And maybe that's why it's such a good fit for me.
Do you have to change your mindset at all when writing for each different character in your books?
That is a super question. And the answer is yes, I do. For instance, in 3 Times Lucky, which you mentioned, is the Newbery Honor book. Mo and Dale are best friends in that book. Mo is a straight line thinker, and Dale is more creative in the way he thinks. He's more back and forth. He thinks in circles. He thinks in swoops. They're both really funny characters, but their personalities are so different, even though they're best friends for life, I betcha. So I do think differently, very differently when I write each character. Once I kind of get the outline of the character in place in my mind, and once I know what that character likes and what that character really cares about and what that character's heart really desires, then I do switch back and forth. And sometimes people ask me, who's my favorite character? Well, some days it's Mo and some days it's Dale. And I just go with my mood according to which character I'm rewriting and who I'm building at the time. But both of those characters are so funny to me. They both make me laugh out loud, and they both make me cry.
Which character do you think your favorite is today?
Today, I'm more like Mo today. I'm wearing red. I'm more outgoing today. I'm more in a straight line. I am a little bit bolder today. Dale would, if I were more like Dale today, I'd probably be wearing blue, and I'd be a little bit more introverted than Mo.
Having a story about spies, Hatteras Island wasn't a spur of the moment decision for you, was it?
No, it wasn't. You know what? That's a super question. Hatteras Island, I don't know if you know where it is, but it's right off the coast of North Carolina where I live. It juts out into the ocean at the graveyard of the Atlantic. And Hatteras Island and the other outer banks of North Carolina are beautiful white sand islands with really tricky ocean currents. And so Hatteras Island is famous for shipwrecks and for pirates. And in The Island of Spies, which is my latest book, you find out about another part of Hatteras history, which was secret until recently. I discovered it when I was about 9 years old. My family was vacationing on Hatteras Island, and I was walking down the beach with my dad, and I saw this shiny black stuff that had washed up on the sand, and I said, "What is that?" And he's the one who told me. He said, "That is oil, and it is coming up off the bottom of the ocean from the ships that were sunk there during World War II." And I said, "Why did they go down?" And he said, "Because there were Nazi subs right off the coast torpedoing all those ships and sending them down." Well, I had never heard of it. I hadn't heard of it in my history classes. And it turns out very few people heard of that. If you lived in North Carolina close to the coast, like my dad did, like my parents did, you would know about it because you could see the ships burning offshore at night. But if you live, say, in Kansas or California, probably you didn't hear about it because the news was classified during World War II to keep everybody from getting too scared. They didn't want people to know we had an enemy right offshore. So I learned about it when I was about 9 years old. I became interested in it. As I got older, I've done lots of different kinds of writing, you all. I've done lots of magazine stories and newspaper stories, and little pieces of this story kept coming into my life through that work. For instance, I got to interview a man named Rainey Jeanette, who grew up in the Hatteras Lighthouse, just like Neb does in the book. And I got to interview him. He was a boy there during that time. He saw all the ships. So different pieces of that story have come into my life in different times and different ways. And finally, I had a chance to write that story about 3 kids growing up on Hatteras Island at the beginning of World War II who are looking for Nazi spies who came ashore. And there were spies coming ashore up and down the East Coast. So it's an exciting story, but not one that I've been thinking about for a long time.
Can you tell us any more about the research that went into writing The Island of Spies?
There was a lot of research in this book. This book is historical fiction. And so, of course, I wanted it to be as accurate as I could possibly make it. I read tons of books on World War II. As I said, I interviewed Mr. Rainey Jeanette, who grew up there. All of my life, I have heard stories about the spies coming ashore. Oh gosh, I read a CIA file that I found online. There was all kinds of research, a wonderful book about the culture of Hatteras Island and ethnography. And I use that to help set up just the daily details of the lives of the 3 kids in this book that are looking for spies. One of the kids, Rainey Jeanette, one of the kids whose name is Rain, is based on an artist in North Carolina, Minnie Evans. And so I had done research on her, and I used that. As well, I visited museums. I did all kinds of things. You know, when you write historical fiction, you really do want to try to make the details as accurate as you possibly can. And when you read the book, you guys, when I read historical fiction and I get to the end, I always wonder, well, which part of that was history and which part was fiction? And so in the very last section of the book, I try to tell you exactly what the history is, so you can separate those 2 things out.
What is your process when putting a middle grade novel together?
Do you decide the end before the middle?
Or do you put it together in order?
With 3 Times Lucky, I always start when the characters start talking to me. I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. I always listen for the characters first. That's my process. That's how I start. And when I see that, what I mean is I listen in my imagination for the voices of the narrator in particular, and for other strong characters in the book. And then I start writing. I try not to be too directive about which way the story's going to go at first. I just listen to the character and follow along. I'm a very organic writer. And that's what I tell kids to do too. Kids write to me and they say, how can I make a character that's as real as Mo LeBeau or as real as Rain in Island of Spies? And I always say, listen to the character and see what their story is and write the story that your characters want to tell, because it will be better than the one you want to tell. With 3 Times Lucky, I heard Mo in my imagination. I knew the first part of the story. By the time I got to the middle of the book, I knew of a scene that would come before the end of the book, but not the end of the book. And I didn't know the title either. So for me, the trick is to keep writing and just have faith that all of these things are going to come together. And so far they have for me.
Rejection is a part of most writers' stories. Can you tell us about that part of your journey?
Will you ask me that again, please?
Rejection is part of most writers' stories. Can you tell us about that part of your journey?
Sure. Rejection is part of just about, I think, a part of every writer's story. Certainly it's part of mine. I started writing when I realized that I was a writer when I was in first grade. I knew that about myself. And I started thinking of myself as a writer then. I got my first job as a writer when I was in high school. I became an intern for a newspaper, and I started there. But as I started sending out stories and poems, that's when the rejection slips started coming in. That's just a natural part of learning how to write well, is you test the markets, you send your stuff out there. It's scary. I don't know how many rejection slips I got before I started getting yeses. But, once you start getting yeses, it gets easier because you have more to build on then. So there were plenty of rejections. I have found that the key to dealing with rejection is to always make sure you have more than one thing out there. Don't send just one thing, because if you get a no on that, it's crippling. You're just totally out of it then. But make sure you have 2 or 3 things out there. So if you get one no back, you can just think, well, they didn't know what they were talking about, and you just send it out again. So that's what I would do to keep myself afloat emotionally. And then when I started with 3 Times Lucky, I was lucky because that series did not receive rejections. So I was lucky there.
That's exactly where you were and your reaction when you found out you were a Newbery Honor author.
What was my reaction when I found out I was a Newbery Honor? You know what? I hung up on the Newbery committee. Did you know that? It's like they call you. So the Newbery committee is famous for calling super early in the morning, and they like to wake people up and surprise people. So, I felt a little bit hopeful. I thought, oh, maybe 3 Times Lucky might get an award. So I was waiting, and the phone didn't ring, and the phone didn't ring, and the phone didn't ring. And then I thought, this isn't going to happen for me. It's not my year. I'm going to go swimming. I'm going to get my stuff together and go swimming. So I was getting all my stuff together to go swimming, and the phone rang, and I looked. And for some reason, I always thought the Newbery committee would call on the landline. I don't know why I thought that, but it was my cell phone. And I looked down, and it was a call, I think, from Seattle. And I thought, I don't know anybody in Seattle. And so I hung up on them. And my husband said, you just hung up on the Newbery committee. And I said, no, I didn't. And then I thought, oh, yes, I did. And it is early there. They are calling me early, but I'm on the East Coast, so it seems late. And then I thought, what am I going to do? Can you call them back and say, oh, I'm sorry? Or do they just skip you if you hung up on them? But fortunately for me, they called back. And so I was talking to the Newbery committee, and they told me that 3 Times Lucky was a Newbery Honor book. And I was so stunned. I was standing there and I was talking to him one minute, and the next minute I was just sitting on the floor. It's like my legs stopped working, and I just sat down on the floor. And that's how I found out that. And they said, what are you doing right now? I said, I'm sitting on the floor because I can't stand up. And they laughed and laughed. So that's how that happened.
Okay, that's one of our many crazy stories of that.
Yeah.
We have interviewed a number of authors who've had books banned.
This means in some parts of the country, kids don't have the same access to books that we have and may not be able to see a window to other people's lives or someone like them in a book.
Could you give us your thoughts on this?
Banning books? Is that what you're asking? Let's see. You know what? I totally oppose banning books. And you're right. Different areas of our country, kids have different access to books. I totally oppose banning books, period. And having said that, I do believe that that parents and media specialists and librarians have a responsibility to guide kids towards books that are age appropriate and that are helpful to them and that fit the kid, which is, what they do all the time anyway, but hopefully. But I do not believe in banning books. I don't want anybody to tell me what I can and cannot read. And I want kids everywhere to have access to my books, of course. So for me, banning books is a hard no.
Tell us your thoughts if you're concerned at all about artificial intelligence and its future impact on publishing.
I don't know what the future impact on publishing will be. I think everyone probably thinks about artificial intelligence right now. I think it is a technology that is here, obviously. And my opinion is that it needs to be well regulated and it needs to be regulated quickly. And, as far as its impact on separate industries, I cannot speculate on that.
What writers have had the most influence on you?
What writers have had the most influence on me? That depends on where I was in my life. I've read lots and lots of different authors, as I'm sure you have. When I was young, I grew up on a farm, and reading was really important to me because there were not a lot of social activities around me. So going to the library and checking out a stack of books was a big deal for me. I always enjoyed reading serials, and I enjoy writing serials too. I think I like them because you get to know the characters. You get to know the characters and you kind of build an emotional relationship with them throughout the books. I like mysteries. So when I was young, I liked to read the Hardy Boys, for instance. I liked all kinds of series. I liked Peter Pan. I loved that book. I like books that I could just step into. And that's what I try to write. I try to write books that kids can read holographically so that when you read one of my books, I hope it will feel like you can just walk into Tupelo Landing and know where you are and know the people, or you can walk onto Hatteras Island and understand what those people are going through and, the mysteries being solved so that you can participate. So I've always liked authors who could create that for me. And like I said, that's what I try to do now.
What advice do you have for young writers?
I try to tell young writers what has worked for me as a writer, as an older writer. Kids often write to me; they send me emails and want pointers, and they want to know how to get published. A lot of times, the thing that I always say is to look for other writers. I will tell you all the truth. That is what has worked for me most in my life so far. Is I take the same creative writing class that I've been taking for 30 years, if you can believe that. But different people come in and out, different writers come in and out, and we read each other's work and we critique each other's work and we help each other. So that has worked for me. That has helped me grow so much as a writer, to have the feedback of other people who are doing the same thing, who can read critically the way that writers read. And that has helped me grow more than anything. So I always tell kids, look for other writers around you and form a group. You'll get an increase in technical skills doing that, but you also get the emotional support of other writers. And that's critical because writing can be lonely, as you pointed out. Most writers get rejection slips, and other writers help with that. not a lot of other professions include a lot of rejection slips. So, I think it's really good. And I tell kids, talk to your librarian, your media specialist, your language arts teacher. And if you need help forming a group, get them to help you because it's invaluable. The other thing I tell kids is listen for your characters. I've told you about that and the way that works for me. And another thing is kids say to me, Sheila, I started the story and it was going great and now it's just stopped. It's like dead in the water. What am I going to do? And I always tell them when that happens, then what you need to add is conflict, because I write mysteries. I can have one character kidnap somebody or steal something, or maybe there'll be a hurricane or anything. But when the story stops, then the best idea that I know is add conflict, and that'll keep it going.
We actually were doing a conflict unit in our school.
Oh, are you really? So then there are all kinds of conflicts that you can use. There are all kinds of styles of conflict. And so just pick one and do it and give your characters something to react to and something to make them get up and go.
About what you are writing now?
Right now, I'm working on a new mystery. I don't know the name of it yet, or I would tell you, of course. It's about a girl named Rubicon James, and it is set in eastern North Carolina, where I live. I like to write about North Carolina because it's what I know best. There is one murder, and there are 2 miracles in the book. I know that. And so we'll see how it goes. I'm listening to the characters. I'm doing exactly what I recommended to you. I'm listening to the characters, I'm writing the story, and I'm getting feedback from other writers.
Finally, it's time for our turbo 10.
10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yes, yeah.
Number 1, what is your favorite phrase to use?
My favorite what?
Phrase to use.
Phrase to use. I guess, gosh, I think it would just be, oh gosh.
Number 2, what is one subject you'd love to learn more about?
Science. I enjoy science, and it's such a broad subject. That's always got room for interesting stuff.
Number 3, what is your go-to snack food?
My go-to snack food, walnuts.
Number 4, what was your favorite book growing up?
Peter Pan.
Number 5, if you could teleport somewhere right now, where would you go?
Love to go to Pompeii.
Number 6, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Rewriting. I do have a superpower, and it is rewriting.
Number 7, what was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
What was my favorite cartoon?
As a kid.
As a kid, my favorite cartoon was probably Mighty Mouse.
Number 8, what's your favorite rainy day activity?
Reading and writing. Both of those go really well with rain.
Number 9, if you could have any 3 dinner guests, who would they be?
Oh my gosh. I guess I would want 3 dinner guests. I would invite Eudora Welty. I would invite, oh my gosh, Eudora Welty, Harry Grant, if he were alive, of course. I'm not sure he is. And Jackie Chan.
Finally, number 10, what's the best piece of advice you were ever given?
To sit down and write. Don't wait for inspiration. Sit down and write. The characters will come if you're in place and you're ready to write. The characters will show up. Just sit down and do it.
You were awesome. Thank you so much for doing that.
And thank you so much for spending this time with us.
We can't wait to read your future books.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed talking to you.